I spent my nights earning $8 an hour while my family sat on leather chairs I was not allowed to touch. For weeks, groceries appeared at my door anonymously. Charity. I thought I needed. Then, a stranger in a green Cadillac handed me an envelope proving my poverty was their paycheck. I am not going back to the folding chair. I am walking into that boardroom to prove exactly who hid my seat. My name is Violet Ward, and my life is currently valued at exactly $8 an hour. I am 29 years old, though under the fluorescent hum of the Night Owl 24/7 convenience store, I feel at least 50. I have lived in Maple Ridge, Colorado, my entire life. A town that sits in the shadow of mountains it costs a fortune to ski on, and a valley where people like me clean the toilets of the lodges. My existence is measured in these $8 increments. A gallon of milk costs half an hour of my life. A new pair of work shoes, the non-slip kind that Dean the manager insists on but refuses to pay for, costs me nearly 4 full shifts. My coat, a synthetic wool imitation that has started to unravel at the cuffs, cost me 2 nights of sleep. It does not even keep the wind out. It just holds the smell of industrial floor cleaner and gasoline fumes against my body like a second skin. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in late November when the door chime dinged, signaling the arrival of another problem. The Night Owl is not a place people come to when their lives are going well. It is a place for the desperate, the drunk, and the lonely. This man was the second category. He was swaying slightly, clutching a can of chili he had bought here 2 days ago. He slammed the can onto the counter. The metal clank echoed in the empty store. "This is garbage," he slurred, his breath smelling of cheap whiskey and stale tobacco. "It expired. Look at the date." I looked. The date stamped on the bottom was indeed 2 days past. "I am sorry about that, sir," I said, keeping my voice flat, the way I had trained myself to do. "I can exchange it for a fresh one." "I don't want a fresh one," he shouted, and spittle landed on the plexiglass divider. "I want my money back, and I want compensation for my time. I can refund the purchase price, sir. Do you have your receipt?" "Receipt? Who keeps a receipt for chili? You think I'm stupid? You calling me stupid?" "No, sir. I just need proof of purchase to open the register for a cash refund. It is store policy." "You are useless," he sneered. He leaned in, his eyes bloodshot and mean. "You are just a useless girl sitting behind a counter doing nothing." The door to the back office swung open. Dean walked out. Dean was 35 going on 12, a man who wore his polyester manager polo shirt like it was a military uniform. He did not look at the customer. He looked at me. "What is the problem here?" "Violet?" Dean asked. "He wants a refund for an expired can without a receipt," I said. Dean turned to the customer, his face transforming into a mask of apologetic servitude. "I am so sorry. Sir, my cashier here struggles with basic customer service concepts sometimes. Of course we will take care of you." He opened the register with his manager key, took out a dollar bill and placed it in the man's hand. "Keep the change. On the house." The man smirked at me, snatching the dollar. "You should fire her. She is rude." "We will certainly have a talk," Dean assured him. When the customer stumbled out, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him, Dean turned back to me. The smile vanished. "That was 99 cents. Violet?" "He didn't have a receipt. Dean, you told us never to refund without a receipt." "And you let a situation escalate," Dean countered, crossing his arms. "You made a scene. You made the store look bad. That 99 cents is coming out of your pocket. Put it in the till." I stared at him. "You cannot be serious. That is illegal." "Call it a training fee," Dean said. "Or do you want me to write you up for insubordination? That would be your 3rd strike. Ward, we know what happens on strike 3. I looked at the register. Then I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against the lint and the single crumpled dollar bill I had been saving for a vending machine coffee. I pulled it out. I smoothed it flat against the counter. I placed it in the drawer. "There," Dean said, satisfied. "Try to be less of a disaster next time, Messy Ward, and come see me in the office after your shift. We need to talk about your attitude." Messy Ward. It was the nickname he used when he felt small and needed to make someone else feel smaller. I did not go to the office when my shift ended at 8 o'clock. I clocked out at the terminal, watching the screen flash, shift complete, 8 hours. $64, minus taxes, minus 99 cents. I walked out into the parking lot. The morning air was brittle and sharp, biting through my thin leggings. The sun was trying to rise over the mountains, painting the sky a cruel, beautiful pink that I was too tired to appreciate. I walked to my car, a rusted sedan that sounded like a dying animal every time I turned the key. I leaned against the freezing metal of the door and pulled my coat tighter. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but I didn't. Instead, hot, angry tears spilled out, tracking through the cheap foundation I wore to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I was crying over 99 cents. No, that was a lie. I was crying because I was 29 years old, and I had just paid for the privilege of being humiliated. I was crying because for 10 years, I had been the family ghost. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my face with my sleeve, leaving a streak of mascara on the gray fabric, and pulled it out. Mom, the message on the screen was short. Family meeting tomorrow at noon to plan Christmas. Don't be late, and remember to bring a dessert. Something cheap is fine. We have the main courses covered. I stared at the words, something cheap. It was not an instruction to save me money. It was a reminder of my place, growing up. Sunday dinners at the Carver house, my grandmother's house, where my mother Patricia and my Aunt Joanne now reigned, were a theater of status. The dining room was dominated by a massive table made of black walnut, polished until you could see your own inadequacy reflected in the wood. Surrounding it were 12 high-backed chairs upholstered in burgundy leather. They were soft. They were permanent. I had never sat in one. Since I was 19, since the day I decided I wanted to study art instead of business, since the day I failed to marry the son of the mayor, my place had been the folding chair. It was a beige metal contraption with a padded seat that had cracked down the middle, revealing the yellow foam underneath. If the table was full, they would squeeze me in at the corner, right next to the radiator that hissed and banged and burned my elbow. If guests were present, important people, as Aunt Joanne called them, I was relegated to the kids' table in the kitchen, or worse, the enclosed porch. It is just easier this way, Violet, my mother would say, her voice breathless and fake. You are so helpful. It is better if you are near the kitchen to help bring out the gravy. I was the help. I was the audience. I was the prop they used to show how benevolent they were. Look, we even feed the failure of the family. I shoved the phone back into my pocket. Not this year, I whispered to the empty parking lot. I can't do the folding chair this year. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking from the cold and the rage. That was when I saw it. Across the lot, parked in the spot furthest from the store entrance, was a car that did not belong in the Night Owl parking lot. It did not belong in this decade. It was a Cadillac, a vintage model, long and wide like a boat, painted a deep, mossy green that seemed to absorb the morning light rather than reflect it. The chrome bumpers gleamed with a predatory shine. It sat there like a king on a throne of asphalt, making the battered pickup trucks and my rusting sedan look like peasants. I froze. Maple Ridge had money. Yes, but it was the kind of money that drove massive SUVs or sleek German sports cars. This was old money. This was deliberate. The driver's side door opened with a heavy, solid thunk. An older man stepped out. He had to be in his 70s, but he moved with a terrifying stability. He stood straight, unfolding himself from the low seat without a groan or a creak. He had a full head of thick, iron-gray hair swept back from a forehead etched with deep, vertical lines. He wore a charcoal wool coat that looked heavy enough to stop a bullet. The collar turned up against the wind. He did not look around. He did not check his watch. He looked directly at me. It was unsettling. Usually, men in this parking lot looked at me with hunger or disdain. This man looked at me with recognition. It was as if he had been waiting for this specific moment, in this specific slant of light, for a very long time. He began to walk toward me. His boots crunched on the grit of the pavement. He didn't rush. He owned the space between us. My instinct was to get in my car and lock the door, but my feet wouldn't move. There was a gravity to him that held me in place. He stopped 3 feet away. He was tall, towering over me. His eyes were a pale, piercing blue, unclouded by age. "Violet Ward," he said. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. His voice was deep, graveled, like tires rolling over stones. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice sounded thin and pathetic in the cold air. "How do you know my name?" He studied my face, taking in the smudged mascara, the cheap coat, the night owl name tag that was crooked on my chest. He looked at the rust on my car door. He didn't look pitying. He looked angry, but not at me. "I am Lionel Carver," he said. The air left my lungs. Carver. The name was stamped on the brickwork of the bank downtown. It was painted on the side of the logging trucks that rumbled down the highway. It was on the plaque at the library. It was my mother's maiden name. Patricia Carver. Aunt Joanne Holt Carver. It was the name they used like a shield and a sword. We are Carvers. People like us, the Carvers, have standards. But they never spoke about a Lionel. My grandfather was supposed to be away, or retired in Florida, or not well. The story changed depending on who was asking, but the implication was always that the women ran the show now. "My grandfather," I whispered, I thought you were in a home, or dead." "Convenient narratives," he said. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat. I flinched, but he only pulled out a thick manila envelope. It was sealed with red string, heavy and bulging. "You work the night shift," he said. "Midnight to 8, 5 days a week. You pick up extra shifts on holidays because they pay time and a half. You live in the basement apartment on Elm Street. Your rent is $600 a month. Are you stalking me?" "I am observing you," he corrected. "There is a difference." He took a step closer, closing the gap. "For the past 3 years, every Tuesday, you have found a bag of groceries at your front door. Rice, pasta, eggs, milk. Sometimes a box of chocolates." My mouth fell open. For 3 years, those bags had been my lifeline. I had assumed it was a church group, or a neighbor who cooked too much, or a mistake. I never questioned it because I was too hungry to question it. When you are living on $8 an hour, you do not interrogate miracles. "That was you," I asked. Why didn't you just knock?" "Because you needed the food," he said simply. "But you didn't need the obligation. Not then." He held out the envelope. His hand was large, the skin spotted with age but the grip steady. "This is not groceries, Violet, and this is not charity." I looked at the envelope. It felt dangerous. It felt like a bomb wrapped in paper. "What is it?" "My family, your mother, your aunt, they believe power is something you hoard." Lionel Carver said. The wind whipped his gray hair, but he didn't blink. "They believe the table belongs to them. They believe you belong on a folding chair." He shoved the envelope into my frozen hands. It was heavy, much heavier than paper should be. "I used to leave groceries because I wanted you to survive," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. "But I am done watching you just survive. I am done watching them treat my blood like a servant." "I don't understand," I stammered. "If you are rich, if you are the Lionel Carver, why are you here? Why now?" "Because I saw the roster," he said. "I saw they have you working Christmas. Again." He looked at the night owl behind me, then back at my car. "That envelope contains the truth, Violet. It contains receipts, photographs, legal clauses. It contains the proof that for the last decade, every time they told you that you were a burden, they were using your name to rob me blind." I clutched the envelope to my chest. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Why are you giving this to me?" Lionel Carver smiled then. It was not a nice smile. It was a smile of a wolf who has just realized the trap is set. Because, granddaughter, he said, I kept a seat for you, a real seat, but you have to be the one to walk into that room and take it. He turned and walked back to the Cadillac. He didn't say goodbye. He got in. The heavy door sealing him in silence, and the engine purred to life a deep, throaty growl. He rolled down the window 1 inch. Open it, he said. Open it when you are ready to stop being their contingency fund. The window rolled up, the Cadillac backed out, smooth and graceful, and glided onto the main road, disappearing into the morning mist. I stood alone in the freezing parking lot, the wind biting at my tear-streaked face, in my hands. The envelope felt warm. It felt heavy. It felt like a weapon. I looked down at the text message from my mother still glowing on my phone screen. Bring a cheap dessert. I looked at the night owl, where Dean was probably already counting my 99 cents. I gripped the envelope until the paper crinkled. I was not going to cry anymore. I unlocked my rusted car, threw the envelope onto the passenger seat, the seat where no one ever sat, and started the engine. It coughed and sputtered before catching. I was going home. And then, I was going to open the envelope. And if Lionel Carver was telling the truth, I was never going to sit on a folding chair again. I carried the envelope into my apartment like it was a live grenade. My place was a 1-bedroom unit above a laundromat, and the floorboards vibrated every time a washing machine hit the spin cycle downstairs. The air always smelled of dryer sheets and stale curry from the takeout place next door. I threw the deadbolt. Not that I had anything worth stealing, but because for the first time in my life, I felt like I was holding something that other people would kill to take away from me. I sat on the edge of my mattress, which was pushed into the corner to maximize floor space, and stared at the manila packet. The string was red, tied in a tight figure 8. Lionel Carver, my grandfather. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. For 3 years, grocery bags had appeared on this doorstep. I had eaten that rice. I had cooked that pasta. I had survived on the peanut butter and the canned tuna. Assuming it was some clerical error at a food bank or a neighbor with a guilty conscience, it was him. The man who owned half the commercial real estate in Maple Ridge had been sneaking around the bad side of town to leave eggs and milk for his granddaughter, because he knew her own mother would not feed her. I pulled the string. It unraveled with a dry hiss. I upended the envelope onto my faded quilt. The contents spilled out in a chaotic heap of paper, plastic, and metal. There were bank receipts, printed on thermal paper that curled at the edges. There were monthly statements with the logo of the Maple Ridge Community Bank. There were photographs, grainy and taken from a distance, showing people I knew intimately doing things I did not know they did. There was a thick log of phone calls, and there were 2 objects that did not look like paperwork. The first was a white plastic keycard, the kind used for secure office buildings, with my name printed on it in simple black block letters, Violet Ward. The second was a heavy iron key with a small tag attached. I picked up a small, stiff white card that had fallen on top of the pile. In sharp, angular handwriting, using black ink, it read, Clause 14.3, Springing Proxy. Below that was an address, Maple Ridge Secure Storage, Unit 214. I did not sleep. The adrenaline that had started in the parking lot was now coursing through my veins, turning my blood into rocket fuel. I picked up the first bank statement. It was for a trust account. The Violet Ward Educational and Maintenance Trust. I blinked. I had never heard of this trust. According to my mother, the family money was tight. She always told me that Grandpa Lionel was senile and had locked up the assets, and that we were all struggling to maintain the Carver standard of living. That was why I had to work. That was why, every month when I got my paycheck from the night owl, I wrote a check for $300, half of my take-home pay, and gave it to my mother. She called it my contribution to the household debt. She said it taught me responsibility. I looked at the balance on the statement. It was not zero. Every month, on the 1st, a deposit of $4,000 arrived from the Carver Legacy Trust. $4,000. I made $1,200 a month working graveyard shifts. If I was lucky and didn't get docked for expired chili refunds, I scanned down the ledger. The money did not stay in the account. On the 2nd or 3rd of every month, There were transfers out. Transfer to P, Ward personal checking. $2,000. Transfer to J, Holt Carver mortgage servicing, $1,500. Transfer to Maple Ridge Country Club, $500. I felt sick. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I grabbed another statement. This one was from a year ago. Same pattern. 4,000 in, 4,000 out. I grabbed a statement from 3 years ago. I sat there, surrounded by the paper trail of my own poverty, and pieced together the architecture of their lie. It was not just that they were stealing from me, it was worse than that. They were double-dipping. My mother, Patricia, drove a Lexus SUV. Aunt Joanne had just renovated her kitchen with imported Italian marble. They claimed these were gifts from wealthy friends or results of shrewd investments. They were living on my trust fund. And the cruelest twist was the $300 I handed them every month. They made me work the night shift, made me stand on my feet until my arches collapsed, made me endure the humiliation of customers throwing expired food at me, just to take half of that money too. They didn't need my $300. They were taking $4,000 of my money every 30 days. The $300 was not about finance. It was about submission. It was about making sure I was too tired, too poor, and too beaten down to ever ask questions. I looked at the receipt for the country club transfer. $500. That was my rent. They were playing golf with my rent money while I slept in a room that shook when the washing machine spun. I threw the paper across the room. It fluttered harmlessly to the floor, but inside my chest, something snapped. It was the last tether of guilt I had held onto the idea that maybe I really was a burden, that maybe I owed them for raising me. I owed them nothing. They owed me everything. I watched the sun come up through my grimy window. It was a gray, steel-colored dawn. At 6 a.m, I showered, scrubbing the smell of the night owl off my skin until I was raw. I put on clean jeans and a gray sweater. I pocketed the white keycard and the heavy iron key. I drove my rusted sedan to the edge of town. The Maple Ridge Secure Storage Facility was a fortress of corrugated metal and barbed wire, sitting on a lot that backed up to the old rail line. I pulled up to the main gate. There was no guard, just a keypad and a card reader. I rolled down my window, the manual crank squealing in protest. I held the white card up to the reader. Beep! The heavy iron gate shuddered and began to slide open. Lionel had not just printed this card yesterday. You do not set up a secure access protocol overnight. He had been waiting. He had been preparing this for months, maybe years. I drove through the rows of orange metal doors until I found Unit 214. It was a climate-controlled unit, located in the interior block. I got out of the car. My hands were shaking, but not from cold this time. I inserted the heavy iron key into the padlock. It turned with a smooth, well-oiled click. I slid the latch and rolled the door upward. I expected to see old furniture, maybe some boxes of tax returns. Instead, I was looking at a war room. The unit was lined from floor to ceiling with industrial metal shelving. It looked like the archives of a law firm. There were dozens of identical white banker's boxes, each labeled with meticulous precision in that same sharp, black handwriting. Medical records, P, Ward, internal emails, 2018 to 2023. Asset holdings, shell companies, governance bylaws. And right at eye level, a row of boxes labeled stipend. I pulled the first box down. It was heavy. I carried it to a small metal table that had been set up in the center of the unit, under a hanging bulb. I flipped the lid. Inside were handwritten ledgers. I opened one. It was a log of every single check written from the trust that bore my name. January 3rd, check number 402, memo tuition, payee St. Jude's Academy. I frowned. I had gone to public school. I graduated from Maple Ridge High. I pulled out my phone and searched for St. Jude's Academy. It was an elite private school 2 towns over. My cousin, Joanne's daughter, went there. I turned the page. February 2nd, check number 409, memo medical expenses, payee Dr. Aris Cosmetic Surgery. I touched the scar on my chin, a white line from when I fell off a bike at 12. My mother had told me we couldn't afford stitches, so she had taped it up with butterfly bandages. It had healed crooked. They were using the Violet Ward Medical Fund for Botox and tummy tucks. I felt a cold, hard stone settle in my stomach. I closed the ledger and looked back at the shelf. There was a thick red binder standing alone on the top shelf, the spine embossed with gold letters. Carver Ridge Holdings Family Trust, 2001. I reached for it. This was the rulebook. This was the document they always claimed was too complicated for me to understand. I opened it. It was hundreds of pages of dense legalese, but someone Lionel had used a yellow highlighter to mark specific sections. I flipped past beneficiaries. I flipped past distributions. I stopped at Article 14 Special Provisions. The yellow ink slashed across the page, practically glowing under the harsh bulb. Clause 14.3. Springing Proxy. I read the text. In the event that a direct descendant of the founder is deemed by the board to be excluded from the primary benefits of the trust, yet maintains independent employment and residence for a period of no less than 6 continuous months without reliance on any Carver family assets, said descendant shall be granted the founder's voting proxy, effectively superseding the current trustees until such time as the board deems the exclusion rectified. I read it again, and a third time. It was a failsafe. It was a trapdoor built into the foundation of the family empire. Clipped to the page was a note on Lionel's stationery. Violet. This clause was my insurance policy. I wrote it 20 years ago because I feared what your mother and aunt would become if they were given unchecked power. I called it the springing proxy because it lies dormant until the conditions are met. The condition is irony. It only activates if they treat a family member like a stranger. If they had given you a seat at the table, if they had given you your fair share, this clause would be worthless. You would just be another beneficiary with no power. But by cutting you off, by forcing you to work for minimum wage, by making you pay your own rent, and refusing to let you access family support, they have accidentally qualified you for the most powerful position in the company. You have been working at the Night Owl for 5 months and 3 weeks. You have paid your own rent. You have taken no money from them, in fact. You have given money to them. You are the only person in this family who is financially independent. 6 months is the threshold. December 25th will be exactly 180 days. I lowered the binder. My hands were trembling. They had created their own executioner. Every time Dean the manager screamed at me, every time I ate ramen noodles, every time I patched my shoes with duct tape, I was earning credit toward taking their empire away from them. I looked at the bottom of the box. There was one more envelope. This one was larger, filled with glossy photo paper. I slid the photos out. They were pictures of Christmas dinners. Last year, the year before, 5 years ago. The camera angle was high, likely from the security cameras Lionel had installed in the main house. The dining room was bathed in warm, golden light. The chandelier sparkled. The table was set with crystal and silver. There were 24 high-backed leather chairs. People were laughing. My mother was raising a glass of wine. Aunt Joanne was feeding her dog a piece of prime rib under the table. And there, in every single picture, pushed off to the side, near the drafty window or next to the hissing radiator, was a metal folding chair. But in the photo from last year, I wasn't even in the chair. I was standing. I was wearing my Night Owl uniform because I had come straight from a shift. I was holding a heavy silver platter with the turkey on it, serving my cousin. And on the folding chair, my designated seat there, was a pile of fur coats. They had used my seat as a coat rack. I stared at the image. I looked at my own face in the photo. Tired, gray, forcing a smile as I served people who were stealing my future to pay for the wine they were drinking. The coat rack hurt more than the theft. The theft was greed. The coat rack was contempt. I put the photo down on top of the red binder. I looked at the date on my phone. It was November 28th. I had less than a month. I had to hold on for 27 more days. I had to keep my job at the Night Owl. I had to pay my rent one more time. I had to refuse any help they might suddenly offer if they suspected anything. I closed the box. The sound echoed in the metal unit like a gunshot. I was not sad anymore. The tears I had shed in the parking lot were the last tears Patricia Ward would ever get from me. I picked up the white key card. I stroked the raised letters of my name. I was going to finish my 6 months. I was going to work every single hour of every single shift. And on Christmas Day, I was not going to bring a cheap dessert. I was going to bring the check. I packed the red binder, the ledgers, and the photos into my battered backpack. I pulled the rolling door down and locked it with the heavy iron key. As I walked back to my car, the sun finally broke through the clouds. It was weak and watery, but it was there. I got into my car and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. I looked poor. I looked like a girl who could be bullied into paying 99 cents for a stranger's mistake. Good. Let them think that. I started the engine. I had a shift tonight. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't dreading it. I was looking forward to it. Because tonight, earning $8 an hour wasn't survival. It was ammunition. The Rusty Fork Diner sat on the edge of the interstate, a rectangular box of chrome and grease that smelled permanently of bacon fat and diesel fuel. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. This was the hour of the long-haul truckers and the construction crews, men with calloused hands and eyes rimmed with exhaustion. It was the last place on earth anyone would expect a coup of the Carver family dynasty to begin. I walked in, my backpack cutting into my shoulders. It contained the red binder, the ledgers, and the photos, the physical weight of my family's betrayal. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand. I had not slept in 24 hours. I had spent the entire night decoding the architecture of my own poverty, realizing that every time I had been told we were tight on cash, my mother had been transferring my trust fund into her vanity accounts. Lionel Carver was sitting in a booth at the far back, away from the windows. He looked out of place, like a diamond in a coal chute. He was wearing a tweed jacket and a crisp white shirt, his silver hair brushed back perfectly. On the cracked vinyl table in front of him sat 2 mugs of black coffee, steam rising in lazy spirals. Next to his mug was a thin manila folder. I slid into the booth opposite him. The vinyl squeaked. "You look tired," he said. He did not say it with sympathy. He said it like a mechanic assessing an engine. "I read the binder," I said. My voice was raspy. "I read the ledgers. You knew? You knew they were stealing from me for years." "I suspected," Lionel corrected. He took a sip of his coffee. "I knew they were greedy. I knew they felt entitled. But I needed to know if they were cruel. There is a difference. Violet, greed is taking more than your share of the pie. Cruelty is taking the crumb from the person starving next to you." He pushed the second mug toward me. I wrapped my cold hands around it. "Why?" I asked. "Why let it happen? You are Lionel Carver. You could have stopped them with a phone call. Why let me live on expired tuna and work at the Night Owl while they renovated their kitchens with my money?" Lionel set his mug down. He looked me in the eye, and for a second, I saw the steel that had built a town. "I call it the Carver machine," he said. "Every family is a machine. It has gears and levers. Usually, you do not know what the machine is made of until you run it at maximum capacity, until you overload it." He leaned forward. "You, Violet, were the stress test." I stepped back. I let them think I was old and disengaged. I let them take the wheel. I wanted to see what the machine would do when it decided who mattered and who did not. I wanted to see if they would tighten their own belts when the trust distributions were capped, or if they would feed you into the gears to keep themselves comfortable. I stared at him. I was an experiment. "You were the proof," he said. "And they failed. They chose to squeeze the granddaughter with no voice rather than cancel a single country club membership. They passed the pressure down. That is how gravity works in this family. But they forgot one thing about gravity. It can be reversed if you change the fulcrum." He tapped the thin folder on the table. "That brings us to clause 14.3. The springing proxy," I said. The words felt foreign in my mouth, legal and cold. "Precisely. I wrote that clause 20 years ago. It is a dormant virus in the company bylaws. It is designed to find a leader who understands the value of $1 because they have had to earn it. It requires a direct descendant to be systematically excluded from family benefits while maintaining independent income for 6 continuous months. He looked at me pointedly. Independent income. That means money you earn with your own hands. Money that does not come from the trust. Money that does not come from me. Money that does not come from a gift from your mother. He pulled a piece of paper from the folder. It was a calendar. The days were marked off with red X's. You started at the Night Owl on July 4th, Lionel said. You have worked every scheduled shift. You have paid your rent from your wages. You have accepted no handouts. Today is December 1st. You have been independent for 4 months and 27 days. He tapped the date of December 25th. Christmas Day, he said. That is the finish line. 6 months exactly. 180 days of unbroken, independent survival. I looked at the calendar. The timeline was razor thin. So I just have to keep working. It is not that simple, Lionel said. His voice dropped, becoming urgent. They are sensing something. Patricia is not smart about business, but she has the instinct of a parasite. She knows when the host is shifting. That is why she is suddenly inviting you to dinner. That is why she will offer you money soon. She will try to give you a check, or a car, or she will offer to pay your rent for the new year. He locked eyes with me. You cannot take it. If you accept 1 cent from them, the clock resets. If you quit the Night Owl before midnight on December 25th, the chain breaks. If you let them buy you a coffee, Clause 14.3 dissolves. They will claim you are a dependent, and they will petition the board to remove the clause entirely during the year-end restructuring. My stomach turned. That is why Dean is trying to cut my hours. My mother called him. Exactly. She wants you dependent. She wants you back on the folding chair, begging for scraps. Because as long as you are begging, you are not a threat. Lionel opened the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the grease-stained table. It was a document titled Memorandum of Understanding. I am not offering you an inheritance, Violet, he said. I am not going to hand you $1 million today. If I did that, I would be no better than them, and you would be just another spoiled Carver. I looked at the document. It was dense text. This is an agreement between us, he explained. It states 2 things. First, total transparency, no more secrets. You see every ledger I see. Second, if you complete the 6 months, if you trigger the proxy, I guarantee you a permanent seat on the board. A seat with a vote. A seat that cannot be folded up and put in the closet. He pointed to a paragraph at the bottom. And this is a reverse non-disclosure agreement. It states that I am the whistleblower. I am the one providing the evidence. You are my acting agent. This protects you. When this blows up, they will call you a thief. They will call you a gold digger. They will say you stole these documents. This paper proves you are acting under the authority of the founder. It turns their accusations into dust. I read the words, acting as the designated agent of Lionel Carver for the purpose of restoring fiduciary integrity. I don't want to destroy the family, I said quietly. I don't want a war. I just want to stop being the joke. I want to stop sitting by the radiator. You think this is about revenge, Lionel said. Isn't it? You are angry at them. I am angry at them. Revenge is an emotion, Lionel said. He cut through the air with his hand. Revenge is messy. It burns out. I am not interested in revenge. I am interested in calibration. He leaned back, and for the first time, he looked like a grandfather teaching a lesson. Fairness is a structure, Violet. Justice is mathematics, but to the people who have benefited from injustice their whole lives, fairness will look exactly like revenge. When you take a privilege away from a person who thinks it is a right, they will scream that you are oppressing them. Let them scream. So what do? For the next 30 days, you do nothing, he said. You do not confront them. You do not hint that you know about the trust. You go to work. You scrub the floors. You take the abuse from that manager. You smile when your mother hands you a pair of socks for Christmas. You endure it. You finish the 6 months. And then, Lionel said, a cold glint in his eye. We walk into the board meeting on December 26th, and we burn the machine down. He placed a heavy fountain pen on the document. I have a paralegal ready to process the filing the second the clock strikes midnight on Christmas. Her name is Mia. She is the best in the county. But she cannot file anything if you do not survive the next 4 weeks. I looked at the pen. It was black with gold trim, heavy and expensive. I thought about the night before. I thought about the picture of the folding chair covered in fur coats. I thought about the insufficient contribution note in the meeting minutes while they spent $4,000 of my money on cosmetic surgery. I thought about the expired chili can and Dean making me pay 99 cents. I realized Lionel was right. I didn't want to hurt them, but I was done bleeding for them. 30 days, I said. 30 days, Lionel confirmed. Can you hold the line? I picked up the pen. It felt cool against my skin. I remembered the way I usually signed my name on the night owl shift sheet scrawled. Hurried, apologetic. I put the tip of the pen to the paper. I wrote Violet Ward. I did not scrawl it. I pressed down hard, the ink flowing dark and permanent. I underlined it. I pushed the paper back to him. I will be at work tonight, I said. And I will be at work on Christmas. Tell your paralegal to be ready. Lionel took the paper. He checked the signature. He nodded. Once. It was not a nod of affection. It was the nod of a commander accepting a soldier into the ranks. Eat your breakfast, he said, standing up and buttoning his coat. You are going to need the strength. He left a $50 bill on the table for 2 coffees and walked out. I watched him go. I watched the green Cadillac pull away through the diner window. I sat there alone in the booth. The waitress came over to refill my coffee. You okay, hun? She asked, eyeing the backpack. You look like you have the weight of the world in there. I looked at her. I touched the spot on the table where the agreement had been. No, I said. I am fine. I just got a new job description. Oh yeah. Does it pay better than the last one? I smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile that felt new on my face. Eventually, I said, it pays in chairs. The office of Mia Langford was located on the 2nd floor of a red brick building on the edge of the historic district, squeezed between a bail bondsman and a dentist. The air in the stairwell smelled of dust, but the moment I opened her door, the scent changed to burnt coffee and fresh printer toner. It was the smell of bureaucracy, but sharp and aggressive. Lionel had called her a freelance paralegal, which I assumed meant she worked from home. I was wrong. Mia Langford was an institution contained within a 5'2" frame. She was wearing a royal blue blazer that looked sharp enough to cut glass, and her hair was pulled back into a ponytail so tight it pulled her eyes into a permanent state of skepticism. Violet Ward, she said. It wasn't a greeting. It was verification. She extended a hand across a desk cluttered with legal pads. I shook it. Her grip was iron. It hurt my knuckles. It woke me up better than the caffeine Lionel had bought me. Lionel says you are the trigger for Clause 14.3, she said, dropping into her chair. He says you have the receipts. Show me. I swung my backpack off my shoulder. I unzipped it and upended the contents onto her desk. The heavy red binder hit the wood with a thud that rattled her coffee mug. The handwritten ledgers slid out. The stack of photos fanned across the surface. The white key card and the heavy iron key clattered on top. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the stack of fresh papers I had just acquired an hour ago from the Maple Ridge Community Bank. I went to the bank first, I told her. I used the key card Lionel gave me to verify my identity, and I requested 6 years of statements for the trust account. Then I asked the teller to print a log of every automatic transfer set up on the account. I remembered the teller's face, a woman named Brenda who had known my mother for years. She had gone pale when I told her to cancel the standing orders. You want to stop the transfer labeled Mom, she had asked? Yes, I had said. Cancel it. Cancel the one labeled Aunt Joanne too, effective immediately. Mia picked up the bank statements. Her eyes scanned the numbers with the speed of a machine. Okay, she said, grabbing a dry erase marker. She stood up and walked to a massive whiteboard that covered the entire left wall of her office. We are not building a sob story here, Violet. We are building a wall, brick by brick. She drew 3 vertical lines, creating 3 columns. Column 1, she said, writing exclusion in blue ink. This is every time they kicked you out, every holiday you spent in the kitchen, every trip you didn't go on. Column 2, she wrote theft in red ink. This is the money trail, every dollar that was supposed to support you that went to them. Column 3, she wrote defamation in black ink. This is the narrative, every time they called you lazy, ungrateful, or useless to justify stealing from you. For the next 6 hours, we worked. The room grew hot. We pinned the receipts to the board with magnets. We turned the handwritten ledgers from the storage unit into a spreadsheet on Mia's laptop. We created a comparison chart. Look at this, Mia said, pointing to a row on the screen. October 14th, 2 years ago, a transfer of $4,000 from your trust to Patricia Ward. The memo says, household maintenance. I remember that month, I said. The heater broke in the basement apartment. I asked my mom for help to fix it. She said things were tight and told me to buy a space heater and wear more socks. Mia typed furiously. Cross-reference. On October 16th, 2 days later, a check clears from Patricia's account to Alpine Luxury Spa for a weekend retreat. Cost $3,800. She went to a spa with my heater money, I whispered. Column red, Mia said, slashing a line on the board. Next, we found a tuition payment for my cousin's private school labeled Educational Support. Violet. I was 26 when that check was written. I was working at the Night Owl. Column red, Mia said. Then we got to the expenses actually spent on me. It was a pitifully short list. Rent for basement apartment, $600. Mia read. Work shoes, $29.99. Uniform cleaning, $12. They spent more on their dog's grooming in 1 month than they spent on my housing in a year, I said, looking at the numbers. The dog groomer is $80 a visit, twice a month. Mia didn't offer sympathy. She offered strategy. Good. That plays well. Juries love dogs, but they hate people who treat dogs better than children. The board will hate it too because it looks like gross mismanagement of fiduciary duty. Around noon, the door buzzer rang. It was June Morales. June had been the housekeeper at the Carver estate for 20 years until her arthritis got too bad. She was a small woman with kind eyes and hands twisted by work. When she saw me, she hugged me, smelling of vanilla and old wool. Mr. Lionel called me, she said. He said it was time to tell the truth about the porch. Mia sat June down and turned on a voice recorder. State your name and your relationship to the family. Mia instructed. June Morales, I was the head housekeeper from 1995 to 2015. Mrs. Morales, did you ever witness Violet Ward being excluded from family meals? June looked at me, her eyes watering. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, Miss Patricia would say the table was full. She would tell me to set a place for Violet on the back porch. It was enclosed, but it was not heated. In December, you could see your breath out there. Did they ever offer her a seat inside? There were always extra chairs, June said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. They kept them in the storage closet, beautiful chairs, but Miss Joanne would say, no, don't bring those out. It makes the room too crowded. Then she would put her fur coat on the empty chair next to her. And what did you do? I used to sneak cookies to Violet, June said, reaching out to touch my hand. I would wrap them in a napkin and bring them out to the porch so she would have something sweet. 1 year, Miss Patricia caught me. She told me that if I fed the help, that is what she called her own daughter, the help before the guests were finished, she would dock my pay. Mia's marker squeaked on the whiteboard. Exhibit B, witness testimony, the cold porch. Thank you, June, I said softly. I signed the affidavit, June said, patting my hand. I always knew this day would come. As June left, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the apartment upstairs. I finished the metadata analysis. You need to come up. Noah. Noah Kemp was a programmer who lived in the unit above mine. He was painfully shy, the kind of guy who looked at his shoes when he said hello in the hallway. But he was a wizard with data. I had asked him that morning if he could help me with the digital side of things. Mia and I drove to my apartment. Noah was waiting for us, his living room lit by the glow of 3 monitors. I scraped the public social media profiles of Patricia Ward, Joanne Holt Carver, and 5 other family members, Noah said, not making eye contact but typing rapidly. I downloaded every photo tagged with family dinner, Christmas, Thanksgiving, or Carver celebration for the last 10 years. He pulled up a grid of images. I ran a count algorithm, Noah explained. I counted the number of humans in the frame versus the number of chairs at the main table. He pointed to a graph. In 92% of the events, there were fewer people than chairs. There was an open seat at the main table in almost every single instance. So it wasn't a space issue, Mia said. No, Noah said. It was a choice. But look at this. He clicked a file. I built a time lapse. I took the photos from the same angle the dining room wide shot and sequenced them chronologically. He hit play. The video was 90 seconds long. It was devastating. The years flashed by. The decorations changed from red to gold to silver. The people aged. Children grew taller. Hair turned gray. But one thing remained constant. In the bottom right corner of the frame, near the fireplace, sat the folding chair. Sometimes I was in it. Sometimes it was empty. But at the main table, there was always a gap filled with a purse, a gap filled with a coat, a gap filled with a gift basket. And then Noah added the audio. I found a video from 3 years ago, Noah said. Joanne was recording a toast, but she didn't stop recording when she sat down. The video played. The image was the table. The audio was clear. Clinking glasses. Laughter. Then, a voice. My Aunt Joanne. Where is Violet? Is she coming in? My mother's voice. Oh, let her sit in the other room. She isn't really a contributor, is she? It ruins the mood to have her moping about her shift at the gas station. Joanne. Put her at the kids' table. Or the porch. I don't want to look at that cheap polyester uniform while I'm eating prime rib. The room went silent. That, Mia said, staring at the screen, is the kill shot. She looked at me. Do we have the driver? Lionel gave me the list, I said. I called him on the way over. His name is Frank. He used to drive the company shuttle. He is meeting us at the office. We went back to the red brick building. Frank was waiting in the hallway. He was a big man with a neck like a tree trunk, wearing a faded mechanic's shirt. Mr. Carver told me to tell you about the beach trip, Frank said, twisting his cap in his hands. Summer of 2021. Go ahead, Mia said, pen poised over her legal pad. Mrs. Patricia ordered the company van, said it was for a client appreciation excursion, Frank said. She had me drive the whole family to the coast, 8 hours. They stayed at the Grand Resort, billed it all to the Client Development Fund. Who was in the van? Mia asked. Patricia, Joanne, the cousins, the husbands, even the dog. Was Violet there? Frank shook his head. No, ma'am. In fact, on the way out of town, Mrs. Patricia made me stop at the Night Owl. I thought we were picking Violet up, but Mrs. Patricia just rolled down the window and handed Violet a bag of laundry. Said, since you are working anyway, you can drop this at the cleaners on your break. I closed my eyes. I remembered that night. I remembered standing in the fumes of the gas pumps, holding my mother's dirty vacation clothes while she drove off to the beach using money that was legally mine. Column blue, Mia said, her voice hard, and column red. That is misuse of corporate funds and personal humiliation in one stroke. By 5 o'clock, the whiteboard was full. It was a tapestry of cruelty. Mia stood back and looked at it. We have the financial forensics, she said. We have the witness testimony of the exclusion. We have the digital proof of the available seats. We have the audio of the intent to degrade. And we have the pattern of using corporate funds for personal pleasure while the beneficiary you was living in poverty. She turned to me. We are not going to civil court, Violet. We aren't, I asked. But isn't that where you sue for damages? Civil court takes years, Mia said. They will drag it out. They will file motions. They will offer settlements. They will make you look like a greedy daughter in the press. She tapped the red binder. We are going to the board of directors of Carver Ridge Holdings. The board. Corporations hate litigation, Mia explained. It scares the investors. It drops the stock price. But more than that, boards hate being lied to. Your mother and aunt didn't just steal from you. They stole from the company. They used corporate drivers for vacations. They used the family trust which the company manages as a slush fund. That is not a family squabble. That is embezzlement. That is fraud. She smiled. And it was a terrifying thing to witness. If we sue them, they are defendants. If we take this to the board, they are liabilities. The board won't wait for a judge. They will execute them in the conference room to save the company's reputation. So what do we do now? I asked. We build the dossier, Mia said. We package all of this, the video, the affidavits, the spreadsheets into a nice, neat binder, and on December 26th, we walk into that meeting and we drop it in the center of the table. She looked at the clock. You have a shift tonight, don't you? Yes, I said. 10 o'clock. Go to work, Mia said. Keep your head down. Let them think they are winning. Let them think you are just the girl who scans the candy bars. Because right now, on this whiteboard, you look like the most dangerous person in Maple Ridge. I looked at the wall one last time. Column blue, column red, column black. It wasn't just a list of grievances anymore. It was a map. And for the first time, I knew exactly where the road led. I picked up my empty backpack. I will see you tomorrow, Mia. Violet, she called out as I reached the door. I turned. When you go to work tonight, she said, don't let them make you feel small. You aren't the cashier anymore. You are the CEO in waiting. I walked out into the cool evening air. I drove to the Night Owl. I put on my polyester vest. I stood behind the counter. But when Dean walked past me and sneered, "Try not to mess up the count tonight, Ward." I didn't flinch. I just smiled and said, "I won't, Dean. I am getting very good at counting." The war began on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 2 minutes after the registered letter from the bank arrived at the Carver estate. I had stopped the automatic transfer. I had cut off the $300 contribution from my Night Owl paycheck. And more importantly, I had frozen the unauthorized access to the trust fund. The silence that followed was the silence of a tsunami pulling the water back from the shore before it crashes down. My phone started vibrating at 3 o'clock. It didn't stop. First, it was a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 4 years. "Is everything okay? Mom says you are in trouble." Then, a call from a great-aunt who lived in Arizona and usually only communicated via Christmas cards. I let it go to voicemail. She left a 2-minute message, her voice trembling with performative grief. "Violet, honey, family is a gift from God. You do not throw it away over money. Your mother has sacrificed her entire life for you. She carried you. She fed you. How can you be so cruel?" I listened to the voicemail while staring at the spreadsheet on my laptop. Column red. Sacrifice. October 9th. Patricia Ward, $500. Memo. Private yoga session. November 2nd. Patricia Ward, $2,000. Memo custom drapery. "Yes," I whispered to the phone. "She sacrificed a lot of my money on curtains." Then came the social media assault. My mother, Patricia, was a master of the weaponized prayer request. She posted a black and white photo of herself on Facebook, looking out a window with a tearful expression. The caption was a masterpiece of vague accusation. "Please pray for my daughter. She has lost her way. She has let the darkness of greed cloud her heart. She has turned against her family and is now attacking the memory of her grandfather. It breaks a mother's heart to see her child choose money over love. Satan is testing us, but we remain strong." The comments section was a bloodbath. "So sorry. Patricia, you are a saint for putting up with her. Money is the root of all evil. Stay strong. That girl always had a dark look in her eyes. I knew she was trouble. They didn't use my name, but in a town the size of Maple Ridge, Patricia's daughter was as good as a GPS coordinate. They were painting me as a demon before I had even filed a single legal motion. At 5 o'clock, an email arrived from Aunt Joanne. The subject line was Resolution and Healing. It was the classic carrot and stick approach. Attached was a PDF titled Family Settlement Agreement. I forwarded it immediately to Mia without opening it. Mia called me 30 seconds later. "Do not reply," Mia ordered. "I am reading it now. Oh, this is rich. This is beautiful." "What does it say?" "They are offering you a monthly stipend," Mia said, her voice crackling with amusement. $5,000 a month, and 20% of a down payment on a house of your choice, up to $300,000. "That is more money than I have ever seen," I said. "It is hush money. Violet, look at page 3. Condition of acceptance. The beneficiary agrees to waive all rights under any and all special provisions of the trust, specifically Clause 14.3, and acknowledges that previous misunderstandings regarding fund distribution were clerical errors." "They know," I said. "They know about the springing proxy." "They are terrified of it," Mia corrected. "They are trying to buy your vote for $5,000 a month. If you sign this, you admit that you were wrong, you admit they were right, and you sign away your power forever. You go back to being the charity case, just a slightly better paid one." "I am not signing," I said. "Good, because the second wave is coming." The second wave hit when I walked into the Night Owl for my shift. Dean was standing at the counter, his arms crossed, his face pale and sweaty. He looked like a man who had been yelled at by someone much richer than him. "We need to talk, Ward," he said. He didn't take me to the office. He talked right there, by the lottery machine. "Your mother called me." My stomach dropped. "Dean, whatever she said—" She was crying. Dean interrupted. "She said you are having a breakdown. She said you are unstable. She said you have been making threats against the family and that you might be a danger to yourself or others." He looked at me with a mixture of fear and annoyance. "She said that if anything happens here, if you snap, if you hurt a customer, if you steal something, the family will hold the store liable because we knew you were unwell." "That is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "She is trying to get me fired." "I can't fire you," Dean said, looking at his shoes. "Corporate rules. I need cause. And frankly, you are the only one who shows up on time." He looked up, and I saw the trap. "But I can adjust the schedule, to give you time to heal." He pushed a piece of paper across the counter. It was the roster for December. My name was gone. Every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every weekend shift, blank. There was only one shift left with my name on it. December 25th, Christmas Day, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. "I am taking you off the rotation until the new year," Dean said. "Except Christmas. Nobody else will work Christmas. If you want to keep your job, you work that shift. If you don't show up, that is job abandonment, and I can terminate you for cause." I stared at the roster. It was precise. It was surgical. If I didn't work, I would be fired. If I was fired before December 26th, I would lose the independent employment status required by Clause 14.3. The chain of 6 months would break at the very last link. But if I did work the Christmas shift, I would be stuck behind a counter while the family held their emergency meeting to restructure the trust, the meeting Lionel had warned me about. They were counting on me being trapped here so I couldn't crash the party. It was a pincer move. Starve me out or lock me in. I looked at Dean. He wasn't the mastermind. He was just a tool. "I will take the shift," I said. Dean looked surprised. "You will?" "Yes. I will be here on Christmas, and I will work the full 8 hours. I pulled out my phone and texted Lionel. They cut my hours. Only Christmas left. They are trying to break the chain. Lionel's reply came instantly. "Hold the line. If you work Christmas, The chain is complete. We will handle the meeting. You just scan the barcodes. But Patricia wasn't done. The next day, the prayer circle went nuclear. She started a group chat with 20 of her closest friends, which meant the biggest gossips in Maple Ridge, and added me to it. Sisters in Christ, please pray for Violet. She is being manipulated by dark forces. We believe there is an older man involved who is turning her against her mother. We fear for her soul. They were spinning a narrative that Lionel, my grandfather, their own father, was a predator, manipulating me. It was sick. It was brilliant. If I showed up with Lionel, they would say I was a victim of elder abuse or a sugar baby scheme. Then she sent me a private message. God forgives everything. Violet, even this. Just sign the paper Aunt Joanne sent. Come home. We have a seat for you. Don't let strangers use you. I screenshotted it. I screenshotted the group chat. I screenshotted the Facebook comments calling me a devil. I sent them all to Mia. Mia texted back, Exhibit D coordinated harassment. Keep them coming. They are digging their own grave with every emoji. But the digital threats started bleeding into the real world. 2 nights later, I found a note taped to the glass door of the Night Owl when I arrived for my shift. It wasn't mailed. It was hand-delivered. The whole town knows what you are. Greedy traitor. Watch your back on the night shift. I stood there in the flickering fluorescent light of the parking lot, reading the block letters written in black marker. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was a threat. Watch your back. I looked at the dark corners of the parking lot. I looked at the empty road. For a second, I wanted to run. I wanted to get in my car, drive away, and never come back. I wanted to sign the paper and take the $5,000 and disappear. Then I remembered the folding chair. If I ran, I would be running for the rest of my life. If I ran, I was admitting that I belonged outside in the cold. I ripped the note off the glass. I marched into the store. Dean was in the back office, counting the safe. I slammed the note onto his desk. Read this, I said. Dean looked at it. He frowned. What is this? This is a threat against an employee, I said, and it is a direct result of the smear campaign my mother is running. You know she called you. You know she is spreading lies that I'm dangerous. I leaned over the desk. I was shaking, but I made my voice sound like Lionel's, low, steady, and dangerous. My lawyer is Mia Langford. She is currently compiling a dossier on workplace harassment and third-party liability. If anything happens to me on this property, if one hair on my head is touched and it comes out that you cut my hours and isolated me after my mother called you to intimidate me, Mia will own this franchise. She will own the building. She will own your car. Dean went pale. The color drained out of his face so fast he looked like a ghost. I didn't know it was like that, he stammered. I didn't want trouble with the carvers. I am a carver, I said. And I am the one you should be worried about. I pointed to the schedule on the wall. I am working Christmas, I said. And until then, you are going to make sure the security cameras are working. You are going to make sure the lights in the parking lot are on. And if my mother calls here again, you are going to tell her that I am the best employee you have ever had. Dean nodded. He looked terrified. Okay, he said. Okay, Violet, I will handle it. I walked out of the office. I stood behind the counter. My hands were still trembling, but I felt something new. I wasn't just defending myself, I was commanding the space. I pulled out my phone and sent one more screenshot to Mia, the picture of the threat note. Add it to the pile. I wrote. Mia replied, column black just got a lot darker. Stay safe. We are almost there. I looked at the door. Let them come. Let them pray. Let them threaten. I had $8 an hour to earn, and I wasn't going anywhere until the shift was done. The letter from the board of directors must have hit the Carver house like a meteorite. 48 hours after Mia Langford sent the formal notice of my intention to appear under Clause 14.3, my phone rang. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a lawyer. It was my mother, Patricia, and her voice was pitched an octave higher than usual, vibrating with a frequency that I recognized as pure panic. Violet, she said, we need to talk. No lawyers, No corporate nonsense, just family, lunch. Tomorrow at noon. She named the place the Maple Ridge Grill. If the Night Owl was where the town's desperation went to buy cigarettes at 3 in the morning, the Maple Ridge Grill was where its ambition went to eat steak at noon. It was a place of dark mahogany walls, hunter green velvet curtains, and servers who wore white gloves to pour water. I had lived in this town for 29 years, and I had never stepped foot inside. I had only seen the interior in the background of my mother's Instagram posts, usually featuring a glass of red wine and a caption about blessed afternoons. I arrived at 11:55. I was wearing the best clothes I owned, black dress pants I had mended 3 times at the hem, and a white button-down shirt I had found at a thrift store for $4. I had ironed it until the fabric shone, trying to press the cheapness out of the cotton. I pushed open the heavy oak doors. The air inside smelled of expensive meat, aged bourbon, and old money. It was cool and dim, a sanctuary from the bright, hard reality of the street outside. A hostess with a clipboard looked me up and down, her eyes lingering for a fraction of a second on my scuffed shoes before putting on a professional smile. "I am meeting the Carver party," I said. "Of course," she said. "Right this way." She led me through the main dining room. I saw the town's power players, the mayor, the bank manager who had looked at me with pity yesterday, the real estate developers. They were sitting at spacious 4-top tables, their laughter muffled by the thick carpet. The hostess didn't stop at any of the large tables. She led me all the way to the back, to a small, semicircular alcove near the kitchen swing doors. There was a small round table. Sitting there were my mother and Aunt Joanne, and there were only 2 chairs. The table was set for 2 crystal water goblets, 2 sets of heavy silver cutlery, 2 white linen napkins folded into swans. Patricia and Joanne took up the entire space. Their designer handbags were on the floor. Their coats were draped over the back of the booth seating. I stopped. The hostess bowed and retreated, leaving me standing there. "Violet," Patricia exclaimed, clasping her hands together. She didn't stand up. "You made it. Oh, honey, you look, well, are you eating enough? You look thin." "Hello, Mother. Aunt Joanne," I said. I didn't move. I looked at the table. "There is no chair for me." Patricia looked around with wide, theatrical eyes. She gasped, a sound that was as artificial as the lighting. "Oh my goodness," she said. "They must have forgotten. How silly of them. I specifically told the reservation line 3 people. Joanne waved a hand dismissively, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Don't make a fuss, Violet. It is a small booth. Just grab a stool from the bar. Or, honestly, we can just squeeze. You can perch on the edge here. We are family, right? We don't need to be formal. Perch, like a bird, or a servant ready to jump up and refill the glasses. It was a test. It was the porch all over again. They wanted to see if I would accept the physical indignity. They wanted to see if I would sit on the edge of the booth, thigh to thigh with the women who were robbing me, grateful just to be in the photograph. "No," I said. I turned and signaled a passing server. He was young, maybe 20, with the terrified eyes of someone who had just started his shift. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Could we please have another chair and a place setting?" The boy froze. He looked at the table. He looked at Patricia, then at Joanne, and finally at me. He turned a shade of crimson that clashed with his green vest. I am sorry, Miss," he stammered. "I can't do that." "You can't bring a chair?" I asked. He swallowed hard. He looked toward the manager's podium as if praying for a sniper to take him out. "The reservation," he whispered, leaning in so only I could hear. The note on the ticket, it said, it was a specific request. No additional seating to be added to this booth, fire code, or something. I looked at him. "Thank you. That is all I needed to know." I turned back to my mother. The blood had drained from Patricia's face. She reached for her water glass, her hand trembling slightly. Joanne, on the other hand, looked furious. Her jaw was set tight. "This is the pattern," I said. my voice calm. I just needed it to happen in public. I needed a witness. Sit down, Violet, Joanne hissed. Stop making a scene. You are embarrassing us. I am not the one who booked a table for two for a meeting of three, I said. Patricia reached into her oversized tote bag. She pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. She slapped it onto the table, knocking over the salt shaker. We are not here to argue about furniture, Patricia said. We are here to save you. Look at this. She pushed the document toward me. It slid across the polished wood, stopping at the edge where my place setting should have been. The title read, Amended Family Support Agreement and Waiver of Claims. We want to make things right, Patricia said, her voice shifting into her benevolent martyr tone. We know things have been strained, so we came up with a new plan, a generous plan. She started listing the terms, ticking them off on her manicured fingers. A monthly allowance, guaranteed, not $300, $5,000 a month, for life, irrevocable. And housing, Joanne added. We will put down 20% on a condo for you, a nice one, not that basement you live in, and a seat, Patricia said, leaning forward, her eyes pleading. A real seat, at Christmas, at Thanksgiving. We will write it into the bylaws. You will have an official place at the table. No more folding chairs. We promise. All you have to do, Joanne cut in, her voice sharp, is sign this waiver. It just says that you misunderstood the trust structure, that you acknowledge Clause 14.3 was a draft that was never ratified. You drop this ridiculous lawyer, you drop the claim, and you come back to the family. $5,000 a month, a condo, a guaranteed chair. 3 months ago, I would have wept with gratitude. I would have kissed their hands. I would have signed anything just to feel the warmth of being included. But I wasn't the girl from 3 months ago. I was the girl who had seen the ledgers. I didn't touch the document. I didn't sit down. I swung my backpack around my faded, canvas backpack that looked so ugly in this room of leather and silk. I unzipped it. I pulled out a single photograph. It was an enlargement of the picture I had found in the storage unit. I placed it on top of their legal document. It was the photo from last Christmas, the golden light. The happy faces, and in the corner, the metal folding chair draped in Joanne's fur coat. You are offering me a seat? I asked. I pointed to the photo. That was my seat. You didn't put a person in it. You put a coat in it. You valued mink fur more than you valued your daughter. I looked Patricia in the eye. You aren't offering me a chair because you love me, I said. You are offering me a chair because you are afraid I am about to take the whole table. Joanne slammed her hand down. This is blackmail. You are trying to extort us with some clerical error from 20 years ago. It is not blackmail, I said. It is evidence. You ungrateful little brat, Joanne spat. We fed you. We let you be part of this family despite what? I interrupted. Despite me being poor, I was poor because you were stealing my money. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the table. Is everything all right here, ladies? I looked up. Standing there was the manager. He was tall, wearing a suit that fit him perfectly. It was Kevin Price. I felt a jolt of recognition. Kevin and I had gone to Maple Ridge High together. We had been lab partners in 10th grade biology. He used to let me copy his notes because I was always too tired from working after school to stay awake in class. Kevin, I said. Violet, he said. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. I heard there was an issue with the seating. We are fine, Joanne snapped. Just a misunderstanding. Actually, Kevin said, his voice smooth but firm. I wanted to clear up the confusion. My server was distressed. He held a small slip of paper in his hand. It was the thermal printout from the reservation system. He placed it gently on the table, right next to the photo of the fur coat. This is the ticket from the booking system, Kevin said. I looked down. The text was printed in stark black ink. Table 12, Section 3, Guest Count 3. Notes. Set for 2. Do not add extra chair. Guest will stand or squeeze. The silence that followed was absolute. It was louder than the clatter of silverware in the dining room. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a server's mistake. It was a written instruction. Guest will stand or squeeze. That is, Patricia started, her face turning the color of ash. I didn't write that. That must be. It was logged from your phone number. Mrs. Ward, Kevin said. At 9:30 this morning. He looked at me. He didn't wink, but there was a solidarity in his eyes. The solidarity of people who work for a living against people who think they own the world. Can I get you anything else, Violet? Kevin asked. A table of your own, perhaps. No, thank you, Kevin, I said. I looked at my mother and my aunt. They looked small, for all their diamonds, for all their expensive haircuts, for all the leather of the booth they were hoarding. They looked incredibly small. I don't need lunch, I said. I just came to pick this up. I reached down and picked up the reservation ticket. I folded it carefully. I put it in my pocket next to the photo of the fur coat. This creates the pattern, I said. Premeditated exclusion. Even when you are trying to negotiate peace, you cannot help but try to make me small. You can't help but hide the chair. Violet, wait, Patricia said, reaching for my hand. Please, we can fix this. We can get a chair right now. Kevin, bring a chair. It is too late for a chair. Mother, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. It was a crumpled bill from my tips at the Night Owl. I placed it on the table, on top of the untouched water glass. For the coffee I didn't drink, I said. I pay my own way. Remember, that is the requirement. I turned and walked away. Violet, Joanne screamed after me, forgetting her manners, forgetting the hushed atmosphere of the grill. If you walk out that door, you get nothing. You hear me? Nothing. I kept walking. I walked past the shocked faces of the mayor and the bankers. I walked past the hostess. As I pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the blinding sunlight, I felt lighter than I had ever felt in my life. I had the receipt. I had the photo. I had the witness. They had tried to trap me in a booth without a seat, but all they had done was hand me the hammer I needed to smash their entire world to pieces. I touched the receipt in my pocket. Guest will stand or squeeze. Not anymore, I said to the empty street. Not anymore. December 24th arrived with a sky the color of bruised iron. The air in Maple Ridge was cold enough to freeze the moisture in your nose the second you stepped outside. But inside the Night Owl, the heat was cranked up to a suffocating tropical blast. I stood behind the counter, wearing the polyester vest that I had hated for 5 months and 3 weeks. Today, I did not hate it. Today, it was armor. This was the busiest day of the year. The procrastinators, the forgetful husbands, and the travelers needing fuel were all descending on the store in a chaotic wave. The bell above the door chimed incessantly, a relentless ding-ding-ding that usually made my teeth ache. Today, that sound was a metronome. It was counting down the seconds until I became dangerous. I tied my hair back into a tight, severe ponytail. I checked my name tag. Violet. Just a first name. Just a cashier. Dean was pacing back and forth near the cigarette rack. He was watching me with the intensity of a hawk circling a field mouse. My mother had done her work well. She had terrified him with stories of my impending mental collapse every time I reached for the scanner. Dean flinched, expecting me to throw it, every time a customer was rude. Dean took a half step forward, ready to intervene before I started screaming. He was waiting for the Ward breakdown. I gave him absolutely nothing. Paper or plastic? I asked a woman buying 3 bottles of cheap wine and a box of stuffing mix. My voice was calm. It was pleasant. It was the voice of someone who does not have a care in the world. Plastic, she snapped, throwing a $20 bill on the counter. Of course. Happy holidays, I said, bagging the items with efficient, practiced movements. I scanned. I bagged. I made change. In my head, I wasn't counting inventory. I was counting the legal chain of custody. Every hour I stood here was another link forged in steel. Clause 14.3 required 6 months of continuous, independent employment without reliance on family assets. If I walked out now, if I cracked, if I took a break that was too long, the chain would snap. Patricia and Joanne would win. They would keep the leather chairs, and I would go back to the folding one. So I became a machine. I watched the clock on the wall. 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m. During my 15-minute break, I sat in the back room on a milk crate, eating a granola bar I had brought from home because I refused to buy anything from the store. I checked my phone. There was a notification from Facebook. A friend of a friend had tagged me in a post. It was Patricia. She had posted a photo of the family tree, a beautiful, ornate graphic, but she had digitally blurred out my branch. The caption read, "It breaks a mother's heart on Christmas Eve. While we gather to celebrate the Lord's love, my daughter has chosen to reject our invitation. She prefers to work a shift at a gas station rather than break bread with the family who loves her. She claims she needs the money, turning her back on our support. Please pray for her stubborn heart to soften." I stared at the screen. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, but I choked it down. She thought she was shaming me. She thought she was painting me as the prodigal daughter who loved money more than Jesus. But she had just handed me Exhibit E. By posting publicly that I was working instead of attending the family gathering, and by explicitly stating that I claimed to need the money and had turned my back on support, she had just created a time-stamped third-party verification of my financial independence. She had just admitted to the world that I was not at the family table and was, in fact, earning my own living on Christmas Eve. "Thank you, Mother," I whispered. "You just notarized my alibi." I took a screenshot. I sent it to Mia. Mia replied instantly, "She is doing our work for us. Go finish the shift." I went back to the counter. The rush had intensified. People were buying lottery tickets, hoping for a miracle, not realizing that the real miracle was happening right behind the register. 6 p.m., 7 p.m., at 7:55. The store finally went quiet. The last desperate shopper had bought a carton of milk and fled. Dean walked up to the counter. He looked exhausted. He held a clipboard in his hand. This was the moment. The night owl used a digital clock-in system. But for holiday pay, corporate required a physical sign-off on a paper timesheet to authorize the double time rate. "You made it," Dean said. He sounded almost disappointed that I hadn't thrown a jar of salsa at anyone. "It was a good shift, Dean," I said. I pulled the timesheet toward me. I picked up a blue ballpoint pen. Date December 24th. Start time 0800. End time 1600. Total hours 8. I signed my name, Violet Ward. I pushed the clipboard to Dean. He needed to countersign it as the manager on duty. He hesitated. He looked at the paper, then at me. For a second, I wondered if my mother had gotten to him again, if she had told him not to sign. But Dean just wanted to go home. He scribbled his signature, Dean Miller, on the line next to mine. "Merry Christmas, Violet," he mumbled. "Don't come in late on the 26th. "I won't be late," I said. "Good night, Dean." I walked out the automatic doors. The cold hit me like a physical blow, biting through my thin coat, but I didn't feel it. I felt a click. It was a sensation deep in my chest, like the tumblers of a heavy safe finally falling into alignment. The final tumbler had dropped. The lock was open. 181 days. I walked to my rusted sedan. I sat in the driver's seat and put my hands on the freezing steering wheel. I didn't start the car immediately. I just breathed, in and out. I was no longer the girl who cried over 99 cents. I was the proxy holder. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Lionel. "The Christmas shift is done. The paper is signed." His reply came 3 seconds later. "The chain is solid. From this moment on, they cannot cut it. Rest tonight. Tomorrow. We hunt." I drove home. I did not go to my mother's house. I did not answer the calls from Aunt Joanne. I went to my apartment, ate a sandwich, and slept the sleep of the dead. The next morning, December 25th, the sun rose bright and sharp. I did not go to the family meeting my mother had texted me about. Instead, I drove to the red brick building downtown. Mia was already there. She was wearing a festive red scarf over her blazer, but her eyes were strictly business. "Merry Christmas," she said, handing me a cup of coffee that was black and strong enough to strip paint. "Let's print this thing." The printer hummed. It was the only sound in the office. We assembled the dossier. It was 14 pages long. We bound it in a simple black cover. Exhibit A, the bank statements showing the theft. Exhibit B, the affidavit from June Morales about the cold porch. Exhibit C, the reservation ticket from the Maple Ridge Grill with the note, "Guest will stand or squeeze." Exhibit D, the social media screenshots of the harassment campaign. Exhibit E, the Facebook post from yesterday confirming my employment. Exhibit F, my pay stubs from the night owl, culminating in the signed timesheet from last night. And finally, the thumb drive. Noah had sent the final file an hour ago. We plugged it into Mia's laptop to check it one last time. The video began. It was 90 seconds of pure, concentrated truth. The time-lapse photos flashed by. The table, the turkey, the laughter, and the empty space. The chair with the coat, the chair with the purse, the chair that was missing entirely. Then, Joanne's voice cut in, clear as a bell, synced perfectly over an image of me standing in my uniform holding a tray of appetizers while they ate. "Violet is not a contributor. She is a dependent. Put her at the kids' table. I don't want to look at that polyester vest." The video ended on a freeze frame of the folding chair. Isolated, lonely, and cheap. Mia pulled the drive out. She taped it to the inside cover of the dossier. "This is a masterpiece," she said. "It is brutal. It is undeniable." "Is it enough?" I asked. "To override the board?" "The board cares about one thing," Mia said. "Liability. This dossier proves that Patricia and Joanne have exposed the company to massive liability, fraud, embezzlement, hostile work environment, reputation damage. We are not asking the board to be moral. We are asking them to be selfish. And selfish people will always cut off a limb to save the body." My phone buzzed. It was Lionel. Update from the inside. The corporate secretary received Mia's notice of filing. The board is in a panic. They have canceled the restructuring meeting scheduled for today. They have moved it to an emergency session tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Patricia and Joanne think this is their chance to tighten their grip. They do not know what you are bringing. "They moved the meeting," I told Mia. "Tomorrow at 9. "Good," Mia said. "That gives us 24 hours to prep your statement." I walked over to the small mirror hanging on the back of Mia's office door. I looked at myself. I looked tired. My hair was still pulled back from the shift. I wasn't wearing makeup, but the eyes staring back at me were different. They were Lionel's eyes. 3 sentences, Mia said from her desk. "Keep it short. Don't let them interrupt. Don't let them drag you into an emotional argument about family love. Stick to the script." I took a breath. I looked into my own eyes in the glass. "I am not here to ask for a seat," I said. My voice was steady. "I am here to prove who hid the seat," I continued. "From now on, we add chairs instead of subtracting people." I repeated it, again and again, until the words didn't sound like a speech. They sounded like a decree. Meanwhile, the digital war outside was escalating. Patricia had realized I wasn't coming to her reconciliation lunch or her prayer breakfast. She had shifted tactics. She posted a new update. This one was darker. "It has come to our attention that our beloved father, Lionel, is being taken advantage of in his fragile state. There are outside influences lawyers, opportunists, who are using my daughter to get to him. We are consulting with medical experts to ensure his protection. We will not let predators destroy this family." "She is pivoting to elder abuse," I said, showing the screen to Mia. "She is going to claim Lionel is senile and I am the manipulator." Mia laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "Let her try," Mia said. "Lionel just passed a cognitive competency test last week. He anticipated this. He saw a neurologist and got a clean bill of health specifically to block this move. He is 3 steps ahead of her. Violet." "She won't stop," I said. "Even after tomorrow, She won't stop. No, Mia agreed. She won't. People like Patricia don't stop until they hit a wall that doesn't move. You are the wall. Violet. I looked out the window at the snowy street. People were walking with presents, holding hands, going to warm houses. I had no warm house to go to. My mother was plotting to have me declared a predator. My aunt was trying to bribe me. My grandfather was treating me like a tactical nuke. But for the first time, I didn't feel cold. I thought about the night owl. I thought about the customers who yelled at me. I thought about the oil stains on the pavement. That part of my life was over. The $8 an hour girl had done her job. She had survived. She had held the line. Now, it was time for the other Violet to step forward. The Violet who held the iron key. I am ready, I said to Mia. Get some sleep, Mia advised. Tomorrow, we aren't going to a Christmas party. We are going to an execution. I left the office. The sun was setting on Christmas Day. There were no carols playing in my head. There was only the rhythm of the text message I had sent to Lionel. The chain is solid. I drove past the Carver Ridge Holdings building on my way home. It sat on the riverbank, a fortress of stone and glass. The lights were off, except for one floor, the boardroom. I knew they were in there. Patricia, Joanne, their lawyers, plotting, scheming, thinking they could simply rewrite the rules to keep me out. They didn't know that the girl they had left on the porch had just bought the building. The headquarters of Carver Ridge Holdings rose from the banks of the river like a fortress built to withstand a siege. It was a structure of gray stone and dark timber, imposing and impenetrable, designed to remind everyone in Maple Ridge who actually owned the ground they walked on. I had driven past this building 1,000 times in my rusted sedan. I had never been invited inside. Today, I was not driving the sedan. I was sitting in the passenger seat of the green Cadillac. Lionel drove with a calm, terrifying precision. He slowed down as we approached the heavy iron gates. The security guard, a man in a crisp suit who looked more like Secret Service than a rent-a-cop, stepped out of the booth. He didn't ask for ID. He saw the car. He saw Lionel. He opened the gate before the Cadillac even came to a full stop. "Remember," Lionel said as the tires crunched over the gravel of the executive driveway, "they expect a girl who pleads. They're about to meet a woman who audits." We walked through the glass doors, past the marble lobby where a receptionist scrambled to stand up, and into the private elevator. Lionel pressed the button for the top floor. He didn't look at me. He was already in the room upstairs. The boardroom was known simply as the box. It was an airless, windowless chamber of dark mahogany and acoustic paneling, centered around a table that was long enough to land a small plane on. The lighting was low and amber, designed to make rich men look distinguished and everyone else look intimidated. When the heavy double doors swung open, the conversation inside stopped. They were already seated. Patricia and Aunt Joanne were on the left side of the table, the side traditionally reserved for the controlling family block. They were wearing their armor, Patricia in a cream-colored cashmere suit that probably cost more than my car. Joanne in sharp black silk. They were laughing at something the chief financial officer, a balding man named Mr. Henderson, had just said, the company lawyer. A man with slicked-back hair and a tie that was too shiny was arranging papers in front of them. Their laughter died in their throats when they saw me. It wasn't just that I was there. It was that I was with Lionel. And it was that I wasn't wearing the hand-me-down dress they expected. I was wearing a simple black blazer I had bought at a thrift store, but I had tailored it myself until it fit like a second skin. I had my hair pulled back. I held the black dossier against my chest. "Father," Patricia said, her voice tight. "We didn't expect you. We thought, well, given the agenda, we thought you might prefer to rest." "I am sure you did," Lionel said. His voice filled the room without him raising it. He walked to the head of the table, but he didn't sit in the chairman's seat. That belonged to Arthur Blevins, an old friend of the family who sat at the far end. Instead, Lionel walked to the right side of the table, the side for the board of directors. There were names on the table in brass holders: Arthur Blevins, Marcus Thorne, Sarah Jenkins, And then there were the lower chairs against the wall, the chairs for the assistants, the chairs for the lawyers, the chairs for the guests. Patricia gestured vaguely to the wall. "Violet, honey, there is a seat back there for you. We can get you a water if you need it." Lionel stopped. He gripped the back of a heavy, high-backed leather chair, an official director's chair right next to the chairman. It was empty. He pulled it out. The legs scraped against the carpet with a sound like a zipper opening a body bag. "Violet sits here," Lionel said. "That is a director's chair." "Lionel," Joanne snapped. "Those are for voting members only. Guests sit against the wall. It is protocol." "Violet is not a guest," Lionel said. "Sit down, Violet." I walked past my mother. I walked past my aunt. I could smell their expensive perfume, a scent of jasmine and entitlement. I sat in the leather chair. It was massive. It was comfortable. And for the first time in my life, my feet were flat on the floor at a table that mattered. Arthur Blevins cleared his throat. "Well, shall we begin?" "I call this emergency meeting of the Carver Ridge Holdings Board to order." He looked nervous. He looked like a man who knew there was a bomb in the room but didn't know which wire to cut. "First item," Arthur said. "Proposal for trust restructuring, presented by Patricia Ward." Patricia stood up. She didn't look at me. She looked at the other board members, flashing a smile that was all teeth. "Thank you. Arthur," she began. "As we move into the new fiscal year, it has become clear that our current trust governance is antiquated. We are burdened by unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles. We need efficiency. My proposal is simple. We streamline the decision-making process. We eliminate the redundant oversight clauses that slow down our ability to react to the market." She used words like agility and modernization. What she meant was, we want to delete the rules that stop us from spending the principal. Specifically, Patricia said, turning a page in her binder, we propose the removal of the dormant clauses in Section 14. These are old provisions, written decades ago, that no longer reflect the reality of our family structure. They are just clutter. She was talking about Clause 14.3. She was trying to erase the springing proxy before I could use it. Joanne jumped in next. "And to support this," she said, "I am proposing a new spending control measure. Any expenditure labeled family gathering or legacy event over $5,000 must be approved solely by the active family administrators, myself and Patricia. This is to prevent unauthorized meddling by non-executive parties." She glared at Lionel. She was trying to cut off his ability to audit them. She was trying to lock the vault from the inside. "Excellent," the company lawyer said, nodding sycophantically. "I have reviewed the bylaws. These changes are within the scope of the board's power. We can move to a vote to strike Section 14 immediately." "Read it," Lionel said. The lawyer froze. "Excuse me, Mr. Carver." "Read Section 14, Lionel said. He was leaning back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "If we are going to delete it, the board should know what they are deleting. Transparency, correct." "It is just boilerplate legalese, Lionel," Patricia said quickly. "Boring stuff. Contingencies for things that never happen, like total insolvency or alien invasion." "Page 34, Lionel said. "Read it, now." The lawyer looked at Arthur Blevins. Arthur nodded. "Read the clause, Counselor." The lawyer sighed. He flipped through the thick document until he found the page. He adjusted his glasses. "Clause 14.3, he read in a monotone voice, the springing proxy. In the event that a direct descendant is systematically excluded from the benefits of the trust, yet maintains independent financial standing for a period of 6 continuous months, the founder's voting rights shall transfer to said descendant." The room went silent. The board members, Marcus Thorne, Sarah Jenkins, sat up straighter. This wasn't boilerplate. This was a coup mechanism. Patricia let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand. "Honest to God, Father, are we really discussing this? That clause requires independent income, real income." She turned to the board, rolling her eyes. My daughter works at a gas station, Patricia announced. She scans candy bars for $8 an hour. That is not income. That is pocket money. That is a hobby. It is pathetic, is what it is, Joanne added, leaning forward. The clause implies a professional standing. It implies a career. You cannot seriously suggest that wiping windshields at the Night Owl counts as financial standing for a multi-million-dollar corporation. They were doing it. They were walking right into the trap. By mocking my job, they were admitting on the official record that they knew I had the job. Lionel turned his head slowly toward the lawyer. Counselor, Lionel asked softly, does Clause 14.3 specify a minimum dollar amount for this income? The lawyer looked down at the text. He squinted. He read it again. Sweat started to bead on his forehead. No, sir, the lawyer said. Does it specify that the job must be white-collar or executive level? No, sir. What does it require? It requires. The lawyer hesitated. It requires that the income be independent of family assets, and that it be continuous. Independent, Lionel repeated, and continuous. The heavy double doors opened again. Mia Langford walked in. She didn't wait to be announced. She walked straight to the table and began dealing out paper files like she was dealing cards in a high-stakes poker game. She placed one dossier in front of Arthur Blevins, one in front of Marcus Thorne, one in front of the lawyer, and one, with a little extra force, in front of Patricia. Exhibit A, Mia said loudly. 6 months of pay stubs from the Night Owl convenience store, issued to Violet Ward, total independence from the Carver Trust. And this, Mia continued, slapping a single sheet on top, is the timesheet from yesterday, December 25th, an 8-hour shift, signed and verified. Patricia picked up the paper. Her hands were shaking. This is ridiculous. You cannot hijack a board meeting with gas station receipts. I am not hijacking the meeting, I said. I stood up. My legs felt steady. The leather chair pushed back silently. I am the proxy holder, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive Noah had prepared. I walked to the large screen at the end of the room. I plugged it into the HDMI port. You said I wasn't a contributor, I said to the room. You said my $8 an hour was a joke. You said I belonged on a folding chair because I didn't bring value to this table. I clicked the remote. Let's see how you value me. The video started. It was 90 seconds long. On the massive boardroom screen, the image was crystal clear. It showed the dining room, the golden light, the laughter, and then the time-lapse began. Year 1. The table is full. I am not there. The folding chair is in the corner, empty. Year 2. The table is full. I am not there. The folding chair has a coat on it. Year 3. The table is full. I am serving food in my uniform. The folding chair has a purse on it. The visual was damning enough. It showed a systematic, cruel exclusion that went on for years. But then came the sound. Noah had mastered the audio perfectly. Joanne's voice boomed through the high-quality speakers of the boardroom. Violet is not a contributor. She is a dependent. Put her at the kids' table. I don't want to look at that polyester vest. Then my mother's voice. She is just the help. Really. Let her eat on the porch. We don't want to spoil the mood. The video ended on a freeze frame of the folding chair, draped in Joanne's mink coat, while I stood in the background holding a tray of dirty dishes. The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy. I pulled the USB out. That voice recording, I said, turning to face the board, was taken 3 years ago. At the same time you were using my trust fund to pay for the renovations on the kitchen you wouldn't let me eat in. I looked at Arthur Blevins. He looked sick. He was looking at Patricia and Joanne not as friends, not as the daughters of the founder, but as liabilities. He was looking at them and seeing lawsuits. He was seeing fraud. Mr. Chairman, Lionel said. His voice was the only sound in the room. I believe the conditions of Clause 14.3 have been met. My granddaughter has been excluded. She has been mocked, and she has survived independently for 181 days. This is a trick. Patricia screamed, standing up. He manipulated her. That video is out of context. Sit down, Patricia. Arthur Blevins snapped. It was the first time in 20 years Arthur had ever raised his voice at her. Patricia froze. She sank back into her chair. Arthur looked at the lawyer. Counselor, is the clause valid? The lawyer looked at the dossier Mia had provided. He looked at the pay stubs. He looked at the affidavit from the bank proving I had cut off the transfers. The conditions are met. Mr. Chairman, the lawyer whispered, the proxy activates automatically. It is a springing provision. It does not require a vote. It just happens. Arthur turned to me. He didn't look at me like I was a cashier anymore. He looked at me like I was the person holding the detonator. Ms. Ward, Arthur said, as the acting holder of the founder's proxy, you effectively control the majority vote of this family's interest until the board resolves this dispute. He paused. We have a motion on the floor from your mother to delete Clause 14, and a motion from your aunt to restrict spending oversight. Arthur looked at Patricia, then back at me. How does the proxy vote? I looked at my mother. She was pale, her eyes wide with shock. She had spent my entire life telling me I was worthless because I didn't have money. She didn't understand that by taking everything from me, she had given me the only thing that mattered. She had given me the qualification to fire her. The proxy votes no, I said clearly. On both motions, Arthur asked. On both motions, I said. And the proxy has a new motion to introduce. Go ahead, Arthur said. I move to suspend Patricia Ward and Joanne Holt Carver from all fiduciary duties regarding the Carver Trust, effective immediately, pending a full external forensic audit. I said, and I move to install an independent interim manager to review all expenditures for the last 10 years. Joanne gasped. You can't do that. We are the trustees. Not anymore, I said. The machine is overloaded. Aunt Joanne, and I am hitting the emergency stop. Arthur looked around the table. Is there a second? Second, Marcus Thorne said instantly. Second, Sarah Jenkins said. The independent directors were jumping ship. They were saving themselves. Motion carries, Arthur said. He banged the gavel. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Patricia, Joanne, I am going to have to ask you to step away from the table. Your access badges will be deactivated until the audit is complete. My mother looked at me. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. You think you have won, she hissed across the table. You are just a girl with a grievance. You don't know how to run a legacy. I know exactly how to run it, I said. I learned it from you. I learned that if you want to keep your seat, you better make sure everyone else has one too. I sat back in the leather chair. It was warm, it was solid, and it was mine. The 48 hours following the first board meeting were not a victory lap. They were a siege. If I thought my mother and aunt would go quietly into the night, handing over the keys to the kingdom because of a 90-second video and a bylaw clause, I was naive. They were Carvers. They did not surrender. They lit the castle on fire and claimed it was a barbecue. The counterattack began legally. At 8 o'clock the next morning, a courier served notice to Mia's office. Joanne had filed an emergency injunction with the Maple Ridge District Court. The filing was a masterpiece of desperation. It claimed that Clause 14.3 was unenforceable due to vagueness, that Lionel Carver was mentally incompetent and acting under duress, and the part that made my blood run cold that I, Violet Ward, was suffering from acute financial stress resulting in mental instability and a conspiracy to embezzle assets. They were trying to get a judge to declare me insane and my grandfather senile. Simultaneously, Patricia launched the public relations nuclear option. She posted a photo on Instagram of herself looking out a rainy window, clutching a rosary. The caption read, "Pray for my father. He is old, he is confused, and he is being weaponized. It breaks a daughter's heart to see predators whispering in his ear, turning him against the family who has cared for him for decades. I will not stand by while my father is abused. I will fight to save him from the darkness. She was pivoting the narrative. I wasn't just a greedy daughter anymore. I was an elder abuser. She was preparing the ground for a competency hearing. She is trying to get power of attorney over him, Mia said, reading the filing. If she gets a judge to say Lionel is unfit, she voids his support of the proxy, she voids everything. Can she do it? I asked. Only if Lionel looks like he's losing it, Mia said. Lionel did not look like he was losing it. That evening, the Maple Ridge Community Leaders Gala was held at the town hall. It was the biggest event of the social calendar. Patricia and Joanne had RSVP'd weeks ago, planning to sit at the head table. Now, their badges were deactivated, and they were consulting crisis management firms. But Lionel Carver attended. I walked in with him. I wore my thrift store blazer. He wore a tuxedo that was 30 years old and fit him better than any suit in the room. When he walked up to the podium to accept a Lifetime Achievement Award, an award Patricia had likely lobbied for him to get, so she could accept it on his behalf, the room went silent. Everyone had seen the Facebook posts. Everyone expected a frail, confused old man. Lionel adjusted the microphone. He didn't use notes. There is a lot of talk about legacy in this town, Lionel said. His voice was strong, resonating off the back walls. People think legacy is what you leave behind in your bank account. I have spent the last 6 months observing my own legacy, and I have learned that a bank account is not a legacy. It is just a ledger. A legacy is how you treat the people who have no power to pay you back. He looked out at the crowd. He didn't name Patricia. He didn't name Joanne. He didn't need to. I have never been more awake than I am right now, he said, his eyes sharp and blue. And I have never been more certain about who belongs at my table. He stepped down. The applause was tentative at first, then thunderous. He wasn't a victim. He was the lion. The next morning, the judge tossed Joanne's injunction out of court. The ruling was brutal. The judge, a woman named Honorable Sarah Halloway, wrote in her dismissal, "The court finds no evidence of incapacity regarding Mr. Carver. Furthermore, the court suggests the plaintiffs resolve their seating arrangements at the dinner table rather than wasting the judicial system's time with frivolous filings regarding corporate bylaws. They simply forgot to read." Dismissed with prejudice. But the real blow came from the digital front. Noah Kemp, my neighbor and data wizard, had joined the independent audit team as a technical consultant. At 2 p.m, he called me. "Violet," Noah said, "you need to come to the office. Now. We found something in the email archive." I drove to the Carver Ridge building. The audit team had set up in a conference room on the 3rd floor. Noah spun his laptop around. "This email was sent 6 months ago," Noah said. "From Patricia to Joanne. Subject line audit delay strategy." I read the text. "Joanne, the external auditors are pushing for a date. We cannot let them see the books before the fiscal year closes. We need a distraction. If Dad were to have a medical episode, maybe a scare, something heart-related, or a suspected stroke, we could claim compassionate grounds to freeze all external reviews for 90 days. I can talk to Dr. Evans about framing the symptoms. It would buy us time to move the vacation expenses into the marketing budget." I stared at the screen. My stomach churned. They weren't just stealing. They had conspired to fake a medical emergency for their own father, my grandfather, just to buy time to cook the books. They were going to use his health as a human shield, I whispered. "It gets worse," Mia said, stepping up behind me. "I just filed this email with the court and the board. We are asking for a temporary restraining order against Patricia and Joanne regarding Lionel. We are arguing that they are a physical danger to his well-being." The elder abuse narrative just flipped, I realized. They accused me of it, but they are the ones who put it in writing. "Exactly," Mia said. "And tomorrow morning, at the second board meeting, we are going to show this to everyone." The second board meeting was not like the first. The first had been a shock. This one felt like an execution. The atmosphere in the box was cold enough to preserve meat. Arthur Blevins sat at the head of the table, looking grim. The independent directors were silent. Patricia and Joanne were not at the table. They had been suspended. remember? But their lawyer was there, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. And then the CFO, Mr. Henderson, walked in. He didn't look like the confident man who had laughed with my mother 2 days ago. He looked like a man who knew the ship was sinking and wanted to be the first rat on the lifeboat. "Mr. Henderson," Arthur said, "you have a statement." "I do," Henderson said. He didn't look at the company lawyer. He looked at me. He projected a spreadsheet onto the screen. "This is the shadow ledger," Henderson said. "I was instructed by Mrs. Ward and Mrs. Holt Carver to maintain 2 sets of classifications for expenses." He pointed to a column labeled Strategic Client Development. "These entries," Henderson said, his voice shaking, "correspond to family events. The client summit in Aspen cost $40,000. That was Mrs. Holt Carver's daughter's 16th birthday party. The regional networking gala cost $25,000. That was Mrs. Ward's anniversary dinner." He clicked to the next slide. "I have matched the dates. Every time the family gathered, the company paid. And every time the company paid, they listed the attendees as potential investors. But the guest list was just family." He paused. "Except Violet Ward," Henderson added quietly. "She was never listed as an attendee, and the company never paid for her. It was the final nail. They had lied to the IRS. They had lied to the shareholders." Arthur Blevins looked at the screen. He looked at the email Noah had found about faking the heart attack. "This is criminal fraud," Arthur said, "and conspiracy to cause bodily harm." He turned to me. "Ms. Ward," Arthur said, as the proxy holder, "do you have a recommendation?" I stood up. I looked at the empty chairs where my mother and aunt used to sit. "I recommend the permanent removal of Patricia Ward and Joanne Holt Carver from all roles within Carver Ridge Holdings," I said. "I recommend we appoint an independent trustee, approved by the court, to manage their personal assets until restitution is made to the company." "And Clause 14.3, Arthur asked. "The proxy." Before I could answer, the double doors banged open. Patricia stormed in. She had bypassed security. She looked wild, her hair slightly unkempt, her eyes manic. "You cannot do this," she screamed. "You cannot kick me out of my father's company." "Patricia, you are suspended," Arthur barked. "Security." "No," Patricia yelled, pointing a finger at me. "That proxy is temporary. Read the bylaws. It is a springing proxy subject to a 30-day review period. It has been 48 hours. The board has to vote to ratify it, or it dissolves in 30 days. She looked triumphant. She thought she had found a loophole. She thought she could stall for 30 days, manipulate the board, and get her seat back. "I demand a review period," she shouted. "Violet is just a temp. She is a placeholder." The company lawyer, the one who had looked so nervous before, stood up. He looked at his watch. Then he looked at a document in front of him. "Actually, Mrs. Ward," the lawyer said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through her screaming like a knife. "What?" Patricia snapped. "The 30-day review period is for contested proxies," the lawyer explained. "However, under Article 19, if the proxy is activated due to proven malfeasance or fraud, the vesting period is accelerated." He tapped the paper. "We received the forensic audit report proving fraud at 8:55 this morning," the lawyer said. "That triggered the acceleration clause." He looked at the digital clock on the wall. It read 9:05. "The review period expired 10 minutes ago," the lawyer said. "The proxy is no longer temporary. It is vested." Patricia stopped breathing. "Vested," she whispered. "It means," I said, stepping forward, "that my vote is permanent. It means I hold the founder's shares indefinitely for all matters regarding family governance. It means you cannot wait me out." "Mother, the clock didn't reset. It ran out." Patricia looked at Lionel. He was sitting next to me, silent, watching her with sad, tired eyes. "Daddy," she pleaded, "do something. Tell them." Lionel leaned forward. He placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "I am adding a codicil to the family constitution," Lionel said. It is a statement of principle. He slid the paper toward Arthur Blevins. Read it, Lionel said. Arthur picked it up. Principle of exclusion. Arthur read. Any family member who utilizes company funds or family trusts to systematically exclude another beneficiary from official gatherings shall be deemed to have tendered their resignation from all governance roles, effective retroactively to the date of the first exclusion. The room went silent as the implication sank in. Effective retroactively? Marcus Thorne asked. It means, I said, looking at my mother, that you didn't get fired today. You fired yourself 10 years ago. The day you put my chair on the porch, you signed your resignation letter. We are just processing the paperwork now. It was the ultimate poetic justice. Their own act of gatekeeping was the legal mechanism of their removal. By pushing me out, they had pushed themselves off the cliff. Patricia slumped against the doorframe. The fight went out of her. She realized, finally, that the machine she had built, the machine of exclusion, had turned around and crushed her. Security guards arrived. They didn't drag her out. They just stood there, waiting. Please leave. Patricia, Arthur said. She looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes, just shock. She turned and walked out, the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. The door closed. Motion to remove carries, Arthur said. Unanimously. He turned to me. Ms. Ward, or should I say, Madam Proxy, what is your first order of business? I looked at the table. I looked at the empty seats. We need new policies, I said, to make sure this never happens again. I opened my folder. First, I said, we establish an anonymous hotline for all employees and family beneficiaries. If anyone is told they are not a contributor or is excluded from benefits they are entitled to, they report it directly to the audit committee. Agreed, Arthur said. Second, I continued, transparency. From now on, the seating chart for every event funded by the trust, every dinner, every gala, every holiday is public record. It goes to the board 1 week in advance. If there are 20 beneficiaries, there must be 20 seats at the main table. No kids' tables, no porches. Agreed, Marcus Thorne said, nodding vigorously. And third, I said, I am establishing the Open Chair Fund. What is that? Henderson asked, still sweating. It is a new rule for disbursement, I explained. Carver Ridge Holdings will no longer approve a single dollar for any event, charity or private, unless there is a guaranteed open chair policy. That means we do not fund exclusion. If you want our money for a party, you have to prove you have room for everyone. If you cut someone out, the check bounces. I looked at Lionel. He was smiling. It was the first time I had seen him smile in a boardroom. The open chair policy, Lionel said, testing the words. I like it. It is not just for family, I added. It is for the staff, too. No more drivers eating in the car while the family eats lobster. No more housekeepers hiding in the kitchen. If they are working the event, they get a meal, and they get a break, and they get respect, or we don't hold the event. I thought of June Morales sneaking me cookies. I thought of Frank the driver. I thought of myself, eating a granola bar on a milk crate in the back of the Night Owl. We have a lot of money, I said to the billionaires at the table. We can afford more chairs. We can't afford to be cruel. Arthur Blevins closed his binder. Let it be written, he said. The open chair policy is adopted effective immediately. I sat back. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But it was a good kind of tired. It was the tired of a builder who has just finished a foundation. I looked at the empty space where Patricia used to sit. It wasn't scary anymore. It was just a chair that was waiting for someone who deserved it. Meeting adjourned, Arthur said. Lionel stood up. He put his hand on my shoulder. You did good, kid, he said softly. I didn't do it for me, I said. I know, Lionel replied. That is why you won. We walked out of the boardroom together. As we passed the reception desk, the receptionist looked up. She looked terrified, expecting the usual wrath of a Carver woman. Good morning, I said to her. "Good morning, Ms. Ward," she stammered. "Can I get you anything?" I looked at the waiting area. There were 3 chairs against the wall. "No," I said. "Actually, yes. Call the furniture company. Tell them to bring more chairs for the lobby. I don't want anyone standing while they wait." She blinked. Then she smiled. A real smile. "Yes, ma'am. Right away." I walked out into the sunlight. The air was crisp. The river flowed steadily beside the building. The fortress was still standing, but the drawbridge was down, and for the first time, everyone was invited inside. The heavy double doors of the boardroom did not slam shut. They clicked softly, sealing the silence inside. 2 security guards, men with faces like stone, had escorted my mother and my aunt out of the room. Aunt Joanne had gone quietly, her face a mask of icy calculation. I knew that look. She was already mentally drafting her next lawsuit, calculating which judge might be sympathetic to a woman who had lost her country club privileges. But Patricia, my mother, could not leave without one final act of theater. Just before the guards guided her into the hallway, she had twisted around, her eyes wild and brimming with tears that were half rage, half terror. She didn't scream about money. She didn't scream about the company stock. "You will regret this," she had shrieked, her voice cracking against the acoustic paneling. "You will regret this when that seat isn't warm enough. It is cold at the head of the table. Violet, it is cold." Then the doors closed. I stood there, staring at the wood grain. Even in her final moment of defeat, she was obsessed with the temperature of the furniture. She had unwittingly confessed the truth of the entire war. It wasn't about leadership. It wasn't about legacy. It was about physical comfort. It was about who got to be warm and who was forced to freeze on the porch. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning system. The remaining board members, Arthur Blevins, Marcus Thorne. Sarah Jenkins sat motionless, looking at the empty leather chairs where the Carver dynasty had just been amputated. Lionel moved first. He walked over to me, his steps slow on the thick carpet. He stood beside me, not as a grandfather protecting a child, but as a partner standing with an equal. "I watched you cry in a parking lot over 99 cents, Lionel said softly. His voice was rough with emotion. "I watched you beg a manager not to take $1 from your pay because you needed it for gas. And today, I watched you shut off a multi-million-dollar pipeline without asking for a single dime for yourself." "I didn't want their money," I said. "I just wanted them to stop using it to hurt people." "I know," Lionel said. "And that is why you are the only one fit to hold the checkbook." He gestured toward the side door of the boardroom. The service entrance. The door opened. A young man walked in. It was the server from the Maple Ridge Grill, the one who had been forced to tell me I had to stand or squeeze just days ago. He wasn't wearing his server uniform today. He was wearing a heavy wool coat, and he was pushing something on a dolly. It was a chair. But it wasn't just any chair. It was a high-backed executive chair, upholstered in deep, rich burgundy leather that matched the boardroom set perfectly. The wood was dark mahogany, polished to a mirror shine. It didn't look new. It looked timeless. The server pushed it to the head of the table, right next to Lionel's spot. He peeled off the protective plastic wrap. On the top rail of the chair, where a brass plate usually listed a donation date or a title, there was a small, simple plaque engraved in silver. It read, "Violet." "I commissioned it the day you started working at the Night Owl," Lionel said. "I kept it in storage. I told myself that if you quit, if you took the easy way out, I would burn it. But if you finished the 6 months, well, I would bring it to the room." He looked at me. "It is not a folding chair. Violet, it doesn't wobble, and nobody is allowed to put a coat on it." I reached out and touched the leather. It was cool and smooth. For 10 years. My seat had been metal. It had been plastic. It had been a milk crate in a storage room. I pulled the chair out. It was heavy. It had presence. I sat down. The leather groaned softly as it took my weight. The armrests were solid. My feet were flat on the floor. I looked down the long expanse of the table. past the terrified faces of the independent directors, past the empty spots of my tormentors. I didn't turn around to look at the door where my mother had exited. I didn't feel a need to chase her with words. That role, the role of the girl who seeks approval, was gone. It had evaporated the moment I signed that timesheet on Christmas Eve. Mia Langford stepped forward. She was carrying a small, folded piece of fabric. She walked to the center of the massive table, the spot where Patricia had previously stacked her restructuring proposal binders intended to lock me out forever. Mia shook the fabric out. It was a table runner, deep blue velvet, embroidered in the center, in gold thread that caught the amber light of the chandelier, were two words, "Open Chair." She smoothed it flat. It looked like a flag planted on conquered territory. "The paperwork is ready, Madam Proxy," Mia said, placing a stack of documents on the table in front of me. I picked up the heavy fountain pen, the same one I had used to sign the agreement with Lionel in the diner. "First order of business," I said, my voice steady. "Financial freeze." I signed the first page. "Effective immediately, all credit cards, expense accounts, and discretionary funds issued to Patricia Ward and Joanne Holt Carver are suspended. The accounts are frozen pending the completion of the forensic audit." I looked at Mr. Henderson, the CFO. "That means if they try to buy gas on the way home, the card declines," I said. "If they try to book a flight, the card declines. They are now living on their own independent income. I hope they have some—" Henderson nodded vigorously. "I will notify the bank within the hour." "Second order," I continued, signing the next page. "The establishment of the Open Chair Fund." I looked at the board. "We are taking the budget that was previously allocated for strategic client development, the money my family used for vacations, and we are repurposing it. This fund is now dedicated to restitution and inclusion." "Restitution for whom?" Marcus Thorne asked nervously. "For the people who were erased," I said. "For June Morales, who was forced to eat on a freezing porch while serving our family. For the drivers who waited in the car for 8 hours without a meal allowance. For every beneficiary, employee, or staff member who was told they didn't matter." I looked at the empty chairs again. "From this day forward, we have a policy of seat priority. In any event funded by this trust, the first seats the best seats. The ones nearest the heat and the food go to the people who were previously excluded. If you were ever sent to the kids' table, you sit at the head of the table now. If you were ever told you weren't a contributor, you get the first plate." Arthur Blevins, the chairman who had presided over this company for 20 years while looking the other way, cleared his throat. He looked at me, and I saw something shift in his eyes. It wasn't fear anymore. It was relief. He realized that I wasn't burning the company down. I was fireproofing it. I was saving them from the lawsuits that would have destroyed them. "It is a sound policy," Arthur said. "It protects the firm from liability. It restores our reputational standing." He picked up his own pen. "Let the minutes show," Arthur announced, his voice booming formally, "that the board unanimously adopts the Ward Carver Open Chair Policy. This principle shall replace all previous governance regarding family conduct." He looked at me. "Your name is on the wall now, Violet, not as an heir, but as a principal. Ward Carver, my name, next to the founder's name, not because I was born to it, but because I had fought for it." The meeting adjourned at 11 o'clock. I walked out of the boardroom, but I didn't go straight to the elevator. I walked to the stone balcony that overlooked the river. The wind was cold, biting at my face, but I didn't zip up my coat. I wanted to feel it. I looked down at the town of Maple Ridge. I saw the church where my mother had weaponized her prayer circles. I saw the bank where I had printed the statements. I saw the winding road that led to the rich neighborhoods, and the cracked pavement that led to the basement apartments. It was the same town, but the fortress behind me was no longer a castle that locked me out. It was a building with unlocked doors. Lionel came out and stood beside me. He didn't say anything. He just handed me a paper cup of coffee from the break room. It was cheap coffee, not the artisan stuff from the executive suite. "Tastes like victory," he said, taking a sip of his own. Tastes like caffeine, I replied, smiling. We drank in silence, watching the river run. An hour later, I drove home. I took the long way, the route that went past the highway exit. I slowed down as I approached the Night Owl 24/7. The parking lot was empty. The lights in the canopy were off. The gas pumps were dark. Taped to the glass door, right where the threatening note had been just a few days ago, was a handwritten sign in Dean's messy scrawl. Store closed early. Critical staff shortage. No cashier. I stopped the car for a moment. I watched the sign flutter in the wind. Dean hadn't realized that the useless girl he had bullied, the girl he had fined 99 cents, was the only thing keeping his store open on the hardest shifts. He had assumed I was interchangeable. He had assumed I was trapped. He was wrong. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't go inside to say goodbye or to gloat. The $8 an hour Violet Ward had finished her shift. She had clocked out for the last time. Her labor had purchased her freedom, and she didn't owe the Night Owl another second of her life. I put the car in gear and drove away, leaving the dark store in my rearview mirror. I didn't drive to a mansion. I didn't go to a car dealership to buy a new Porsche. I drove back to my apartment above the laundromat. The floorboards still vibrated from the washing machines below. The air still smelled of dryer sheets, but the space felt different. It felt clean. I sat down at my small, wobbly kitchen table. I opened my laptop. I had set up the new email address just an hour ago before leaving the office. Open Chair Carver Holdings, com. I had expected silence. I had expected it would take weeks for people to trust the system. There was already one unread message. I clicked it open. The subject line was simply, "Is this real?" The email was from a man named Marcus. I recognized the name. He worked in the warehouse of the logistics division, loading the trucks that carried Carver timber. Dear Ms. Ward, I heard about the new policy. I don't know if this counts, but for the last 5 years, the warehouse crew has been told we aren't allowed to use the cafeteria in the main building during the Christmas party. The managers say we look too dusty for the office staff. They give us boxed lunches and tell us to eat in the loading bay. It is freezing in there. Last year, I ate my turkey sandwich sitting on a pallet of drywall while I watched the executives eat prime rib through the glass window. I just wanted to know if that is allowed anymore. I read the words. I felt the familiar sting of the cold, the humiliation of the glass wall, the taste of a sandwich eaten in shame. I didn't forward the email to HR. I didn't send it to a committee. I hit reply. My fingers flew across the keys. I didn't write like a corporate executive. I wrote like a woman who knew exactly how cold that loading bay was. Dear Marcus, it is not allowed anymore. Not today, not ever again. The cafeteria is yours, and next year, you won't be watching through the glass. You will be sitting at the table. Tell me everything. Here, everyone has a seat. I hit send. I closed the laptop. I looked at the empty chair across from me in my tiny kitchen. It was just a cheap wooden chair, scratched and worn. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't waiting for someone to tell me I could sit in it. It was open, and that was enough. This has been the story of Violet Ward, the girl who turned a folding chair into a throne. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Maya Revenge Stories. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you in your car, at work, or maybe sitting in your own favorite chair? Let me know in the comments below so we can share our thoughts. Please don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people who need to hear that their seat is waiting for them. See you in the next story.